So the next thing I want to do is open up this bag. This bag was attached to our reel that we took off while the head was sitting on its back. So I'm going to open up this bag next and lay out a couple of our pieces that are on the inside of it. So let me open up some of these pieces here. So we've just taken everything out of that brown bag that was hanging on the reel, and a couple of pieces I want to talk about here is we're going to use these out on the front and front, center, and far right of our head. So when you're sitting in the combine seat and you're looking out, that's the right side of the head. And you're going to see how we're going to mount these pieces up, and we're going to use these couple of bolts that came with. And then as we move across, these will also hook on the front of these, and you'll see how we hook these all together. We keep coming over, and we're going to see we've got a couple of bags here with some carriage bolts in, and then we've got this 34-7-598. We're going to be using this bag here shortly first. And then we've got our cam bolts up top. So this is kind of what's comprised of what's inside that bag. And we're going to walk over to our head now and start removing a few more pieces. We just need to make sure that we don't remove anything before we say to remove it on this head. And we'll talk about why that's important here shortly. Our next step is we're now going to raise our head back up so we can take the blocks off of both ends, and then we can lower our head back down to the ground. So we're going to go ahead and raise our head now and pull our blocks back out. Now that we have our head back on the ground, we've got some bolts across the front we're going to take out. So we're only going to take these top two bolts off of the left side, center, and right side. Make sure you do not take any other bolts loose at this time. We don't want to take the chance of this reel sliding off of our support arms because they're not attached by any of the cylinders or anything. So at this point, I'm going to just pull these top two bolts out. I'm going to go to the center and then the left side and take those bolts off also. I'm going to take the top two off. And now we're going to move to the right hand side of the head. We're only going to take the top two off over here. Now while we're over here on this right hand side of the head, we've got this strap, anti-rotation strap in here. We want to take this strap out. So the first bolt on top, our bottom bolt here is a 15 mil, so we're going to use the ratchet on that. In our next step, we're going to put these brackets up here on the front of our reel mounts. Before we take anything else off or even try to raise our reel to hook up our cylinders, we want to put these brackets on because we don't want to take the chance of this reel sliding down and falling off. Now, one thing I want to make special note of here is when this gets bolted on, we're going to see how this is kind of wobbly at first, and it's kind of a dead giveaway that there's some welds right here that are sticking out. So with these welds sticking out on these outside edges, it's not a real smooth surface. So if I were to go ahead and tighten this tight against this plate, when I tighten that in, that's going to squeeze these insides in as this pushes in, and those welds are going to push out. It's going to prevent us from being able to slide this piece on the inside. So just kind of know that from experience. that we need to check out and make sure that this is a nice smooth surface. So on this surface we got some welds sticking out here. We need to go ahead and grind those down flush before we can actually bolt this on. So I'm going to go ahead and grind that down now in order to make it so we got a nice smooth surface to bolt this together. So we now have the surface ground down smooth, so we don't have any weld bumps sticking out, and we can go ahead now and bolt this plate right to the front. And we're going to go ahead and put this on the other end, but while we're right here, we're going to make sure that this slides right on the inside, which it still does. And I'm going to put one pin on the inside at this point so that when we hook our cylinder up later, we can rock this forward in order to get it hooked up and properly in place. So I'm just going to set that pin in there so that that piece is ready to go. We're going to go down to the right side of the head and put this same plate on. So we're over here on the right hand side of the head. These welds all look nice and smooth. I don't see any problems over here, so we can go ahead and bolt this bracket on. Make sure our piece fits on the front and it slides in. So we're going to walk through now hooking up our lift cylinders for our reel. We've already got up in front, we've got a strap around our reel hooked to a forklift so that we can lift the reel. I need to open up the side here so I can get some better access. And we've got a few more things that are tied on. For instance, our light is laying on the inside here. I'm going to cut that loose and take that out of here. So we've got our light hanging out on the inside. I'm going to unplug the light so I can kind of get it out of the way. And I'm just going to set that off to the side. We're going to take some more of these wires loose on the inside also. For our lift cylinder, we're going to take that loose. And our lift cylinder also has a metal band on here that we'll have to end up cutting off also. On the side, we've got another wire up here holding our reel fore and aft cylinder. We're going to take that off, kind of get that sitting freely so it can move also. And then while we're on the side here and cutting stuff off, we've got a wire here, and this is hooked to our multi-tool. And you're going to see later on what we're going to use this MacDon multi-tool for. It's used for a lot of adjustments on this head. So we've got this out of the way. While we're on the outside, we're going to want to straighten out our cotter pin. So for this pin to hook up our lift cylinder, and then we've got another cotter pin down here on the inside, and we need to straighten that one out so we can pull that out also. At this point, I'm going to hop on the inside of the head. We're going to go ahead and we're going to raise our reel now. So on our cylinder, we've got this metal band that we need to cut off. The cylinder's probably going to be under pressure, so be careful as you're cutting this off. I'm going to cut it right between the clevis. And then on the other side, I'm going to cut between the clevis. And then that makes it a lot easier taking these metal bands off if you cut in between the clevis. So what we're going to do is I'm going to pull this cotter key out, set that down, and this top bolt, I'm not going to pull it all the way out because otherwise this bracket's going to fall. I'm going to only pull it over so it's still holding in to hold that bracket up. We want to make sure that our adjustment bolt is down. So we're going to push up in. Put our cotter key back in. And now we can hook this lower cylinder up on the bottom side. So I'm going to pull our cotter key out, get our pin out, and now at this point I can just kind of pull the cylinder back, put our pin back in, and then we'll be able to put our cotter key back in and spread it again. So we've got that cylinder in place. We can go ahead, lower our forklift back down and get it out of the way and move to the center of our head next. So now we're raising the center reel of our head. It should pop right out of its lower brackets. A little bit more, about there. So in the center we've got 2 lift cylinders here, and we need to hook those lift cylinders up. So I'm going to straighten out the cotter keys. And then from there we can hook back up our center lift cylinders. You want to lower down the forklift just a little bit. Then we've got those pins in. We're going to go ahead and put our cotter keys back in now. And spread them. Then we can go ahead, lower down, and then we'll move to the right hand side of the head to raise the reel down there. We're on the right hand side of the head. We've got a few more things we need to cut off from shipping in order to do this side of the head. Cut our wires off here. This is all hooked to our cylinder on the inside. And we're going to take our light loose on the inside also. Unplug the light, set that down. And I'm going to open up our side cover. We've got a few more wires here on the inside to take loose. At this point, we've cut off those items, but make sure you don't cut off anything on our reel yet, on the reel part. So we're just focused on this outside area, and we want to get to this lift cylinder on the inside. So again, we need to straighten out our cotter pins on these 2 pins to hook this lift cylinder up, and we need to go ahead and cut that metal band off of this lift cylinder as well. So on our cylinder again, we're going to go ahead and cut that metal band off. We're now going to raise our reel up so we can go ahead and put this cylinder in place. Should be good there. So I've removed this cotter pin off already, and I'm going to pull this bolt out still so it's holding our lock in here. Keep in mind we're going to be the clevis. Goes up into here with the adjustment bolt at the bottom. We've got that pin in, and then I'm going to go ahead and put the lower pin in, and then I'll put my cotter pins in the end. And we need to go ahead and spread them, and then we'll have these 2. We're going to go ahead and put the lights on since we just set those off to the side. The hardware for the lights is already attached to it. They are a lock nut, so we're going to go ahead and zip these off so we can use them. And the way these are going to mount up is right up here on the inside. And you'll notice that there is a left and a right to the lights. They go on the inside of a bracket on in here. So we've got a 15 nut and a 16 bolt head here. In order to get in there, you might have to put that nut on your wrench in order to slide down on the side. And then once you hold that with your wrench, you can get it started. And then we got to plug in our lights while we're right here. Plug it back together, and then we'll go ahead and we'll do the right hand side of the head. We're going to go ahead and put the right hand light on the head also. So remember, this bracket goes in between and our bolt faces out. And the top nut, I usually get started in my wrench so I can hold it. Slide it down the side and get it started in there. And then while we're here, we'll plug our head in also, or our light in to our head, I should say. Now we're on the right hand side of the head, and we're going to pull this bracket off, and then we got to put a bolt back in its place. We've got an 18 mil. And we're going to take that bolt out, not reuse it. That bolt that was in that bag, the 347581, is what's going to go back in its place. And we're going to put it back in just like the other one. We've got that tightened up. Now we can move on down the line. We can take these pieces off. This is our in-cab side draper speed control. We're going to go ahead and cut these wires. This is going to be for our side shields up on the reel. That's what's all in this bag, so we got to assemble all that also here in a little bit. So I'm going to cut that, get that out of the way as well. We're going to move on down to the center of the head. We're going to take this reel support out from shipping. We just need to loosen the top two bolts and take the bottom ones out. So I'm going to loosen this one. Loosen the one on the other side on top. Spin the bottom one off. Spin the bottom one off. So we're going to pull those bottom bolts out. You kind of cam these back pieces up, and then you can take this piece out of there. On the left-hand head side of the head, we're going to take this bracket off also. And we're going to put another bolt back in its place, this 347581. Finishes up those pieces.